Well, hello everybody. Thank you all very much for coming along on what day is it? Wednesday afternoon. This is our last in a series of sort of overviews and ideas for teaching online. We've done A2 Key and Key for Schools, B1 Preliminary, B2 First today, and C1 Advanced a week or two ago. We won't be doing Proficiency, unfortunately, but we will be running a series of sessions on the individual papers for C1 Advanced and C2 Proficiency, which are starting in the first week of June, I think, because we have had some requests for Proficiency, not very many, but we know it's quite a beast, it's quite a difficult paper to deal with, so we'll be looking at C1 and C2 together in a lot more detail. So as I said, this is the last in a series. We'll have a similar structure to the previous ones we've done. What we've tried to do is to cover the sort of skills that are new or the task types that are new at each level. So we look through the whole paper, focusing in on some bits in more detail. We don't have time to go over everything, unfortunately. We only have an hour and a half. And we just about managed to do it in an hour and a half this morning. My name is George Heritage. I work in the Assessment Services Department in the Madrid office. And this...
Hello, my name is Victoria and I work with George in the Assessment Services Department in the Madrid office.
So an overview of today, Victoria.
Yeah, we are going to look at tasks in B2 First and First for Schools, and also we are going to look at how they reflect real life skills.
Yeah, we're going to hopefully give you some ideas, help you develop your student skills and some practical ideas to use in the online classroom. We've got lots of resources today. We can't go into many of them in too much detail, but there's a lot of resources that we'll be talking about, and we'll be giving you all access to a useful links document at the end of the session, which will have lots of resources that we speak about today. We will also be giving out a certificate of attendance at the end of the session. We'll give it an hour for people who have to leave in an hour. And everything will be recorded and go up on YouTube, so you can refer back to it later if you miss some bits. Okay. So firstly, we're thinking, we did this with C1 Advanced, and I think it's similar. But in terms of higher education, what skills do you think we practice in preparation for B2 First that are useful in higher education, Victoria?
Yeah, writing essays, developing an argument and structuring ideas, and also doing some research and understanding textbooks. I think these are some of the skills included for the preparation of B2.
Yeah, understanding and taking notes at lectures. So B2 is at the upper end of an independent user of English, and students with a B2 level should be able to follow an academic course fairly successfully. Delivering presentations, taking part in discussions, if we're speaking higher education, seminars perhaps, presenting arguments, justifying their arguments.
Also, from a social point of view, being able to take part in conversations and develop them, and also enjoy life outside the classroom.
And hopefully it will help them become more autonomous as learners, developing independent study skills, good time management. I think really at B2, definitely at C1, as we said before, but B2 we can really start. Students have enough, have a good enough command of the language to take more matters into their own hands in terms of self-study, etc. And lots of the resources we'll be looking at will can work in a self-study context. The workplace, Victoria?
Yeah, reading and writing emails. So this is quite frequent nowadays.
Yeah, and messages in chats.
Yes, definitely. Also understanding and taking notes at meetings and teleconferences.
Definitely teleconferences at the moment. Developing conversation, social skills for networking, should we say, interaction with customers, colleagues in other countries.
Yeah, presentations, taking part in discussions, presenting arguments, and negotiating decisions.
Reading and writing reports, which I think feature in B2 First, but not First for Schools. Yeah. Developing arguments, structuring ideas. And we're beginning now to understand when and how to use formal and informal language. In our B1 session, we had a lot of teachers saying, oh, doesn't this need to be written informal? And at B1, students don't really yet have a broad enough vocabulary or flexibility of use of the language to really differentiate. But at B2, this does start to become more important, this differentiation between more formal and informal vocabulary, structures, expressions, and depending in what context they are speaking or writing. So we're going through in an unconventional order, I think, not the order we have here. Here's a quick overview of the paper, if you're not familiar. You have reading and use of English, 75 minutes, and candidates, generally speaking, should be able to understand factual texts on topics that are not familiar with some support.
For writing, they have 80 minutes, and they should be able to present an argument and opinions in writing, of course.
Listening, identify the expression of feelings and attitudes such as criticism, disapproval, agreement, etc.
And finally, speaking in 14 minutes, students need to show that they can keep up a conversation on a fairly wide range of topics and express opinions and present arguments.
Excellent. Yes, Veronica, the main difference really is only in the writing paper. Apart from that, there's very little difference. Different task types in writing for schools and
the standard schools. Version.
Exactly. So we're going to start off with writing, which is unconventional. We're going to ask you all this question. We have asked thousands of teachers this question, and we tend to get similar answers. But let's see what you say. In the chat box, what do you think helps students improve their writing? The first one is nearly always, wait for it. Reading. Well done. Right, let's thank you very much. Reading, yes. Obviously, I mean, it's very difficult to write without enough reading input. Vocabulary, practice, obviously a lot of practice all the time. You know, it's tricky to get them writing.
Brainstorming.
As much as we would like. Brainstorming, lovely. Writing, reading. Organization of ideas, definitely. This becomes more important now. At B2, we'll look at some of the one of the assessment criteria. Some of the criteria later. Improve the vocabulary. Yes, a huge amount of things. We've come up with some more sort of general areas that we think we can, if they're borne in mind, they can help students prepare. So preparation beforehand, which a lot of it I think can be down to teachers as well. You know, building up to a writing task, helping with the preparation, scaffolding, breaking things down into manageable chunks for them. Next one, Victoria, my favorite.
Planning. Your favorite, planning. So trying to bear everything in mind so that we can produce a good piece of writing. And finally, reviewing. So checking it, reading it again to make sure is up to level.
Definitely in an exam situation, I think planning and reviewing are essential. I would always tell my students to use 10% of their time. They've got 2 tasks in how many minutes did we say? 80 minutes. Yeah, so that's 8 minutes. So 3-4 minutes planning before each piece of writing, so they know exactly what they're doing, make sure that they're covering all the content points, etc. We'll look at this in more detail now. So preparation, Victoria?
Yeah, includes motivation, so using digital resources, which are very useful nowadays. Also trying to personalize material and trying to make students participate actively, thinking about their own personal situations. Also becoming familiar with conventions, analyzing model texts, and which will help them come across good writing examples. And finally, George?
Scaffolding, as we said before, breaking the work down, breaking the process down into manageable chunks that they can get used to and comfortable with before putting everything together for the final piece. I forgot what I was going to say. I was like, final countdown? No, that's a song. Planning. Things to bear in mind with planning.
Go ahead.
No, you go, Victoria.
bearing in mind the target reader, because this is going to affect everything. Also, task requirements, which include content points, type of text, number of words. Also, the reason why we are writing, if it's to give information, if it's to entertain, to persuade. And George, organizing ideas.
Yeah, organization, which is a whole writing criterion in itself. But organizing ideas, organizing into clear paragraphs, organization within paragraphs, and B2, well, I mean, and below, but using paragraphs, but using paragraphs effectively and appropriately, using linking words, but appropriately. Again, we get you get a lot of weaker B2 students. You get these essays that are full of however and nevertheless and notwithstanding, but it doesn't really make any sense, and it detracts from the thread of their writing. So internal organization, as well as the more obvious titles, paragraphs, etc. And your favorite, Victoria?
Reviewing, so reading the text again and making sure that there is a variety, a range of vocabulary and structures, simple and some more complex ones. Also trying to use synonyms and checking for slips. And again, making sure that all the task requirements are met.
Beautiful. And yeah, just save a couple of minutes at the end to calmly read through. Look for common slips. Students at this level should probably know by this point, what those sort of ingrained errors that they make, or little slips that they frequently make. So just taking that time afterwards to review, I think is a very important skill. Other ideas we had, Victoria?
Teacher feedback also super useful to make students aware of their strengths and weaknesses and point them in the right direction to improve. Also, peer and self-assessment. George, I think we have talked about this in other webinars, but very useful.
Yeah, we'll be touching on it here. If you're more interested in writing, especially, we did a webinar called The Right Criteria. It's available on YouTube, looking at different writing criteria and how to use that in the classroom. Also, getting feedback right, which is about different approaches to giving feedback on writing, when to use which type of feedback, and really thinking about the best feedback to support our learners at different stages of the writing process. And the top one, Victoria?
It's not my favorite. Yeah, the top one, learning diary. So maybe having a portfolio of all the different pieces of writing that students have done throughout the academic year. Also having a list of the new vocabulary or the mistakes that they used to make, and maybe hopefully they no longer make. And later on, we are going to talk about Write and Improve, which is a nice detailed portfolio.
Lovely. So, motivation, Victoria. What ideas do you have for this?
Well, we have an idea to try to make students interested in the topic by introducing also reviews, which are new. It's a new text type at this level at B2. So our idea is to find, in this case, 2 reviews of a famous or a recent movie. This was La La Land.
You could find more, depending on the size of your class, etc.
Yes. And then divide the class, in this case, into 2 groups. Group A will be given Murphy's review, and Group B will be given Kermode's text. And each group reads their text and identifies what the writer sees as the film's strengths and weaknesses. And then a student from A goes on to work with a student from B, and they share their information and they compare their answers. And then, as a follow-up, they can identify key functions and aspects of reviews, such as describing, expressing opinion, and giving a recommendation. And then, George, you suggested also using these as a model text.
Yeah, I mean, obviously using them as models as well, either before the activity or after the activity. So a lot of the time, I think it's nice to use model texts subtly. You know what I mean? Sort of, as the focus of a an activity with perhaps a different focus,
Hmm.
and so they're subconsciously, absorbing the aspects of the model text as they work with them. Scaffolding. Some approaches to scaffolding, Victoria?
Yeah. In this case, the activity that we suggest is based on an essay and the instructions of an essay. So if you can see, we have divided the rubric into chunks, okay, with different type of information. So the green square includes basic instructions and word count. The red square is providing students with the context. So the target reader in this case is the English teacher, and the text type is an essay. And then, George, the purple square.
Purple square is the title of the essay. It's the topic that they will be discussing. So they can discuss their ideas, try to answer the question, justify their opinion. Again, if groups are too large, you can divide them into different groups, perhaps in breakout rooms if you're using Zoom. Could be an option, and then you'll be integrating skills as well, because here we're reading, we're speaking, all in preparation for writing. Yellow square, Victoria?
Yeah, the different content points, the different aspects that they need to include, plus their own idea. So hopefully in the previous discussion, some of the ideas included in the yellow square have already been mentioned.
Exactly. In the purple stage, hopefully there will be plenty of ideas. And I think using collaborative brainstorming is a really nice way to help build up to something like this.
Maybe for larger groups, when it is tricky to get students into groups, we could use Padlet, and then we can create different categories, as we can see here, for them to include their ideas.
And we can break it down. You can put them up on screen. You can get your students to vote on various statements. I think we'll look at that in a little bit more detail later. Again, another way to use Padlet, just pop some ideas up on a Padlet, making friends, having a parent as a teacher, and homework could just be everybody brainstorming on Padlet. Again, an advantage with Padlet is you can create groups using Padlet. So if you have 5 or 6 groups, create 5 or 6 different Padlets with different focuses, or the same focus, and then pull them all together. I'm glad to hear you use Padlet, Lily. We've had lots of very interesting approaches to using Padlet from different teachers. I think it's a wonderful tool for lots and lots of different ways, but especially for brainstorming and encouraging more collaborative approaches to things like writing. I think it's a wonderful platform.
Definitely.
So back to the essay, back to the black and white.
Yeah. So with Padlet, we've seen that apart from getting ideas, students will be using expressions and vocabulary that they can then use in the essay. But probably some of the most common, one of the key functions in an essay is to express opinion and justify it.
Exactly.
So here we have an idea of how we can do this in class, trying to give as much practice as possible. So you can write on your screen like a controversial statement. For example, celebrities earn too much money.
Football players don't earn enough money, etc., etc. You could set up polls on Zoom or on other platforms. Again, you could break this up into different Padlets and do it for homework. And what would be the main approach here, Victoria? What are we trying to elicit from our students?
Yeah, we are going to try to elicit language to agree and disagree and express opinion.
Exactly. So if we have 5 or 6 different options for each of those, that's 20 chunks of language, which again we can share with our students, put up on the Padlet, write an essay including at least 8 of these, for example. It's a really nice way to, again, break everything down into manageable chunks, because if you've just passed B1 preliminary, you get into a classroom and it's like, yeah, you need to write an essay on this, can be a little daunting sometimes, I think.
Definitely. And apart from expressing opinions and justify it, what other linguistic functions is this task, the essay, designed to assess, George?
I don't know. Should we see what our audience have to say?
Yes.
So, what did we say? Expressing opinions,
Mm-hmm.
justifying opinions. What other linguistic functions are we looking for in an essay? What do we mean by linguistic functions, Victoria?
The things that they have to do with language, really. So
exactly. So the sort of end goal of the language that they'll be using. So agreeing, disagreeing, lovely, Gisela. Yep, supporting ideas, definitely, and especially at B2, this really becomes important. We did a session on writing at B2 and above, which is also available on YouTube, and we looked at the P approach. It's a nice way of structuring paragraphs. So point, example, exemplify, elaborate, if you want to add an extra E on the end. But again, it's coming up with a point for a paragraph, explaining it, giving examples, helping them order and develop their ideas. Thank you, Lucy. PPP, yes. Giving reasons and examples, lovely. Yeah, we came up with these. So writing a formal essay, obviously, agreeing and disagreeing, expressing opinions, which we've already looked at.
Comparing and contrasting, giving reasons, and also, as they said, giving information. Okay.
So back to the essay.
We've looked at how to encourage discussion and in preparation for the essay, also how to prepare students and give them expressions and vocabulary to use. And we have mentioned several times in previous webinars that sample answers are a great resource to get students, make students aware of assessment criteria.
Yeah, I think David might be able to put the link to the teacher's handbook, and in there you have a variety of different sample answers. What's the difference between a model text and a sample answer, Victoria?
Well, a model text ideally shouldn't have any mistakes, right?
Exactly. Exactly. Whereas the samples and the ones in our handbook, they're taken from real candidates taking our exams, and you can see how they are assessed, how the examiners use the criteria to mark them. And I think it's quite encouraging for our learners to see, you know, what their peers will be producing. Because sometimes just being presented with a model text straight off the internet, a review can be a bit So it's a nice structured way to approach. And I think with any task, I'm sure you all do this already, but we should be preempting the problems that our students will have so that we can then cater for them. So, I mean, what problems do you think students could have in writing well for a task like this, Victoria?
Yeah, maybe not being aware of the text type, especially at B2, there is a wide range of text types, and also not being able to develop their ideas enough. I think this is a step from B1, right? At B1, maybe they need a bit of explanation, but not too much. But at B2, they really need to develop their ideas.
Yeah, not understanding the task, Gisela, or not reading the question. Again, when we look at the criteria in a bit more detail, content, our criteria is the same for all levels for content. And basically, if they do what is asked of them, they cover the content points, they should get full marks. So here they have to obviously write about the title and include something about having a parent as a teacher, making friends, and their own idea. So it's so discouraging when you see a beautifully written essay, but they've missed out one of the points, and they're always going to lose out on the content side. So moving on from samples briefly onto models and conventions, Victoria?
Yeah, we're going to ask our participants about all the text types that are included in B2 First for Schools, writing part 2.
And first if you want as well, but we'll be focusing on for schools. So what other text types are included? Yes, Louise, cohesion and coherence are very important. I think one of the best ways to ensure that they pull that off is by planning carefully. And early on, using an approach like the P approach for structuring essays can help them get used to doing this. email, letter, email, review, article.
Articles.
I think we've got it all, haven't we? Or
Yeah.
are we missing one? Yeah, no, well done. You all know the exam very well. We looked at the report in another session. I think perhaps for your students who are less confident with writing, the report is quite nice because it's very clearly structured. It has a very standard structure. In this, I would probably say the letter or the email, something quite clear and transactional for our less confident students. For stronger students, I would always encourage them to write an article or a review. I think they have a bit more freedom to show off their flexibility with the language, ask rhetorical questions in an article, you can add a bit of humor quite naturally and easily. A story, what do you think, Victoria?
Stories are tricky.
Yeah,
It is
it
true
can
that
be.
some of our weaker students may have the temptation to go to the story
the story, I can
instead.
write whatever I want.
Yeah,
Done.
but it
But
can be.
sometimes, I mean, applying assessment criteria fairly to a story is quite a tricky thing to do anyway. And if they don't have a nice, clear beginning, a middle, and an end, etc., they're going to lose out on communicative achievement, maybe content. So I'd say it's generally a bit safer to go for some of the others. But by all means, if you have a budding young author, send them to the story, but make sure they're aware of some examples of stories and that they're happy with the assessment criteria before they go for that. So assessment, our favorite. Victoria?
Yeah, we are going to look at some tools that we can use when teaching online, but also when teaching face-to-face. Why not? So we can use on a Word document, we can use the track changes option or the comments. Track changes to show exactly our suggestions for changes, and also comments. In this case, I have given comments expressed in like a code, okay, so that students do this reflection and think about where the problem is.
This is on a very sort of word by word, word and phrase basis, so focusing on spelling, on grammar, etc.
It could be the first stage of the checking process. Really.
Yeah, someone mentioned earlier about drafting. I completely agree. I think encouraging students to draft and to revisit their writing is key to, well, for their academic skills as well. And getting them used to maybe 2 stages or 3 stages of feedback is a nice way to get them used to doing this. So you could, as I said, we did a separate presentation on this. There's a lot more detail, but the first submission, you could write a few comments, give them some guiders. The second submission, you could do what Victoria has done here and point out where errors are. Don't give them the answers, but point out where the errors are, what types of errors they are. And then they can go for the third submission once they've dealt with that. And it gets them used to revisiting a piece of writing and building on it and improving. Because I think that all too frequently, our students go off, do a bit of writing, hand it in. All they look at when they get the feedback is the mark. They're like, 6. And then they forget about it. But getting them to engage more intimately with their writing, I think, can help a lot. A very nice integrated skills approach to feedback, Victoria.
Yeah, we can use the track changes option with the screencast-o-matic. So we will be recording ourselves, explaining where the problems are, and giving options for improvement.
Exactly. So you're practicing their listening as well. It can save you time as well as teachers.
Yeah, and it's nice to combine the 2 skills, listening and reading.
And lastly, Victoria?
Yeah, also these Google Docs, this shared document that allows for peer editing, so students can work on the document at the same time and in real time see their feedback.
Yeah, and see each other's document. I think encouraging peer assessment, as Victoria said, once you get students used to the criteria, they can mark each other. They can help each other with their writing and build on each other's strengths and weaknesses. Write and improve. If you haven't looked at Write and Improve or used it, please do. It's a wonderful resource. We're not going to go into it in detail now, but we have in other sessions. But basically, very quickly, you go to writeandimprove.com. You set up an account. We encourage you to, because then you have a record of everything you've done as a student. And then they have a selection of different tasks at different levels. They answer the task either on a Word document and paste it in, or straight onto the platform. Click a button and they get instant feedback. So it will give them a CEFR level. It will then also, similar to Victoria's feedback on the previous screen, it will highlight areas where there are issues and say spelling, this doesn't, or if it's an extra word perhaps, or the verb form is wrong, so this word doesn't look quite right to us. So again, it's guiding them towards where the problems are and getting them to make the changes, rather than lots of red pen and here are the answers. Other great things about Write and Improve, Victoria, workbooks, class view?
Yeah, for teachers, you can create your own workbooks and invite your student with a code so that they can do the task. And also with class view, which is now free for 2 months, you can get you can see all the students' feedback and all the different attempts they've made and how they have been improving.
Yeah, it's a wonderful resource. I wish I was still teaching so I could use it. But please do check it out if you haven't already. So a quick look at some assessment before we get on to reading. What's this, Victoria?
Well, it's a review it's a task that can be found in our handbook for teachers. And it's asking students to write a review about a clothes shop, and they need to include information about what the shop looks like, the kind of clothes it sells, and the shop assistants, and also asking students to make a recommendation.
I'm going to give you all access to a handout now, which has this in it. It also has the B2 assessment criteria. Okay, so yeah, here is a typical review task. Here is
a sample answer.
A sample answer. Thank you, Victoria. This is taken from the handbook again. So we'd like you, using the criteria that I've given you access to give this candidate a mark for, what should we go for, Victoria? Organisation?
Okay.
Organisation and communicative achievement. Okay, so using that handout that we've given you access to, have a look at the criteria. You should be able to see it now. Oh, well done, Victoria. So content we've mentioned. Content is it relevant to the task? Is the target reader informed? Have they done what is being asked of them? Language, you can look at that in your own time. You're all English teachers. I know they're coming. They've found me. You're all English teachers, but have a look at the descriptors in each band. So a band 3 for B2 is B2. Band 4 is good B2, and band 5 is going up into C1. So all of our criteria overlap like this for writing and speaking. So band 5 in B2 is a band 3 in C1. Okay, a band 1 in B2 is a band 3 in B1. Okay, so at level B2, they'd probably be getting 3s here. Okay, so having a look at that, it's on your handout, Lily, that I've given you access to. So if we have a look again, communicative achievement at this level is split into 2 areas, really. So using the conventions of the task. So is it written like a review? Does it use typical linguistic functions that you'd find in a review? Is the language appropriate for a review? And also, Victoria?
Yeah, communication of ideas, straightforward ideas, and then if you go upwards, complex ideas.
Exactly. And yes, Veronica, 5 is C1. So if you also, you can get the C1 criteria from the handbook, and you will see that the wording is exactly the same. Okay. So we haven't got enough time, I don't think, to go into this in a huge amount of detail now. But just to show you how you can use sample answers, they give you detailed feedback from the examiner. So this candidate was a strong B2. He or she got 4s across the board. If we look at organization, the structure is well organized and coherent. There's a good introduction to the topic. The final closing sentence invites people to come and have a look themselves. And as I was speaking before about internal cohesion, within the paragraphs, there's use of some cohesive devices and linking words, but punctuation also effective and appropriate for the age of the target reader. I think a lot of time we forget about the power of punctuation, especially in terms of cohesion, coherence. And communicative achievement, Victoria?
Yeah, the conventions of the review are used effectively, and the style is appropriate, and the writer has made good use of rhetorical questions to generate interest.
Descriptive, persuasive language, and they're communicating straightforward ideas. So do we have another slide of criteria now? No, we don't. Let's go back. Ooh. If you have a look in band 3 on communicative achievement, to hold the target reader's attention and communicate straightforward ideas. Going into C1, hold the target reader's attention and communicate straightforward and complex ideas as appropriate. So this candidate's done well. It shares features of the two of them, so they get a 4. Okay. Right. Have we finished with writing yet, Victoria?
We have. Yeah.
Finally. we do get very excited about writing, as you can probably tell. But moving on, reading and use of English. God, 2 skills in 1 paper. Generally speaking, Victoria?
Yeah, to develop our students' reading skills, we can use prediction, eliciting participants' ideas, and also making them aware of the different text types, and so that they are familiar with the different text structure, so that they can decide on the best sub-skill to use, and obviously trying to make them or help them learn vocabulary.
Yeah. So all of these feed into and help one another. I think especially at B2 now, I think we'll look at this in a bit more detail. Is it the next slide? No, a couple of slides. B2, having an awareness of the common features of various text types, the language that's being used, and like an inherent understanding of text structure can definitely help them, especially in exam situations with their sub-skills of reading. So are they carefully reading for detail? Are they scanning for specific information? Are they skimming to get an overall idea? All of these play into one another, and it becomes increasingly important at this level. So the skills and the challenges from A all the way up to B2, Victoria?
Yeah, it is true that careful reading is maybe introduced at the lower levels because it's maybe the least demanding, but it is always needed. So I think that the key as we move upwards is to start developing fast reading sub skills. For example, at B1, we can introduce scanning, which is slightly less demanding than other fast reading sub skills. And then at B2, we will also need to give our students enough practice so that they can switch between careful and fast reading as appropriate.
Yeah, and so that they know what kind of reading they need for what situation as well. Because I mean, the tasks that are designed to really test scanning, etc. The input texts are very long, and students don't have time to carefully read the whole text, read the question, go back to the text. They don't have the time. So they need to get enough practice of these sub-skills and be equipped with the knowledge and the tools to know when to employ each type of reading as appropriate. Easier said than done, but a couple of nice resources, and this beautiful photo which Victoria was very proud of. This looks like a great resource. Can you talk us through it, Victoria?
Yeah, Breaking News English has a tool or an activity in which the text appears, and it helps students read quickly. Okay, so because it is forcing them to read quickly as the text disappears. And you can use these by maybe helping students predict the information beforehand, then asking them to read the text and preparing some questions asking for gist, so that the reading comes with the comprehension as well. So they are combined.
Exactly, and the sort of gamifying things a little bit can make reading more interesting. We know it's difficult sometimes to encourage our students to read, especially at lower ages, younger ages. But as you can see, these are there are different levels. So depending on the reading speed, level 3, level 4, level 5, and it's all using authentic stuff. So this is more relevant than perhaps some input text that you might see in our exams. Breaking down reading further, Victoria.
Yeah, again, we see the progression from lower levels to higher levels. So at lower levels, students are expected to recognize and understand a word. The decoding process is more challenging for them, and they need to understand basic meaning or a phrase or a sentence. At B1, they are starting to understand implied meaning, so reading between the lines. Starting. And then at B2, also trying to work with a whole text, so reading and understanding information across sentences or paragraphs. Using also different texts comes at C1, so at higher levels.
Lovely. Another great resource. This is currently it's a beta product, so it's still under development, so it's not perfect, but I think I've had a play with it and it's wonderful. Read and Improve. If you already have a Write and Improve account, you can use your same login. Okay. And so you choose what level you want to practice. And as you can see, it will give you a list of articles. These are all real articles taken off the internet. Okay. And click on one and it will give you level appropriate, exercises and different access to words, phrase, sentences within it. So how does it work here, Victoria?
Once you are on in the text that you've chosen, you can hover over your mouse over some words, and then you will get information about the actual word. So in this case, we can see more details, so definition, examples of how to use it, and something that we found very useful, George, was this like word cloud with that shows words that collocate with that specific word that you looked up.
Which is a really nice way to practice collocation. And this is AI, it's artificial intelligence, so it's learning and improving as it goes. As I said, it's still under it's still in development. But just this word info thing is so cool. It's a really nice way to help them build on their vocab, their appreciation of collocation, etc. And then there's a little task at the end, a comprehension task. So how well do you understand the text? Read the text, write a short summary here, and this they can click and get instant feedback. Okay, and as you can see a graph, we haven't got any checks there, but it will show how their understanding and their summarizing has improved as they go along. Again, it's totally free, so please play with it. David might be able to put that, or has he already?
Yeah, he has already.
He has already. Yeah, excellent. Thank you, David. Some vocab.
Yeah, we've said that vocab is very
This is all Victoria vocab.
Well, this was an idea that came from one of our presenters, Emily Stewart, but I really liked it, so we borrowed it. And in this case, we are using different words, and with the help of a dice, students throw the dice, and let's see that they get, for example, 3. So they will have to work with employ. And then they throw the dice again, and let's say that they get just 1. Okay, so they will need to come up with a word for employ. So for example, employment in this case. And the team that, if we divide the class into teams, the team that gets all the answers correct, obviously wins. And then another option is to do it the other way around. So in this case, we have different suffixes. So again, with the dice, we can get students to come up with words using these suffixes. So shape, so French shape, for example, and more words that they should come up with.
Do it quite easily with prefixes as well.
Definitely.
And you can do this digitally. There are plenty of dice programs, and I think you can change the numbers to whatever you want. So it could work quite nicely online.
Yeah, I think like this fun side of the activity can help them remember words easily.
Yeah. In the C1, we looked at the word families exercise, didn't we? Whereas
in this case, we are going to look at the keyword transformations.
Yeah, which now only arrives in B2. Is that correct, Victoria?
Yeah.
There used to be a mini one in B1, but not anymore. And it can be one of the most daunting and difficult exercises to approach. What do you think the challenges are for learners in these tasks, Victoria?
That they don't read the instructions and they write too many words.
Well, she's so strict. She's so strict.
You know what I mean? But it happens, unfortunately. And they also sometimes they change the keyword, the given word.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can't even think about the answer, even if they know it. And sometimes comprehension can be tricky, and they don't understand the original sentence. So obviously, their rephrasing is compromised.
So, approaches to help, Victoria?
Well, we are going to suggest different scaffolding approach. Okay, so different ideas to introduce this activity. So the first one, for example, would be the jumbled transformation. So we are going to give students all the words they need, plus some distractors.
Plus, we have to have some distractors. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any fun.
Exactly. We love the challenge. So they need to identify the distractors and also put the words that they need in the correct order.
So Anna has been doing the best she can to look after her children. Ooh.
Well done, George.
Oh, thank you, Victoria. Thank you. I haven't done B2 for a while. Another approach?
Yeah, using a multiple choice option. Okay, so in this case, we can use Kahoot. So we are going to give students 3 options for them to choose from. And to make it a bit more challenging, maybe they can tell us why the distractors don't work.
Oh, are we going to ask our participants? No, okay. I don't think we have time. So what is the answer, everyone? What is the answer to this? There's a bit of a horrible distractor in here. We'll be able to pay you a refund. Unable to pay a refund unless the product is not in perfect condition. Nope. We'll be unable to refund the money you paid if the product is not in perfect condition. Or we will be unable to give you a refund if CCCCC. People are concentrating. The answer is C, but B works. We will be unable to refund the money you paid if the product is not in perfect condition. But why is it not correct, Victoria?
I think there are too many words.
Exactly. There are 7 words and the maximum is 6. So, yeah, making them aware of typical mistakes that students of their level make. This is a really nice way to introduce some good distraction and make them aware of the nitty-gritty of why things aren't quite right. And lastly, Victoria?
Yeah, we can try and give them clues about the type of language that they need to include. So in this case, a request and an indirect question.
Lovely. Try and break down what they need to transform and then get them thinking about fixed phrases collocation with the word given. Do you know the answer to this, Victoria?
I'd be grateful if you could remind me to phone Charlie on
Oh,
Friday.
well done. Well done. There are lots of there are lots of exercises on our website at Learning English, and you can filter them by the level that you want to test and the skills you want to test and how much time. So please use these with your students, especially now we're all online. Right, listening. We're doing pretty well on timing today, better than this morning. Listening, Victoria, talk us through.
First, we're going to be looking at what makes listening in another language difficult.
Yes, what does make listening in another language difficult?
Yes. Okay. So, any ideas that we came up with, George?
I was wondering if people might put in the chat box. Accents. Accent speed, accents, vocab, pronunciation, vocabulary, unfamiliar words,
background knowledge.
Excellent. Yeah, this is what we came up with: concentration and attention, and it's very stressful sometimes listening another language. The level of interest, processing time that they have, because you have input text. Maybe the rubric, and then the listening text, and being able to process everything in a short amount of time in another language is difficult. Again, the complexity of what they are being asked to process.
Also, background knowledge. Although we design our tasks so that background knowledge is not a problem. Okay. Also, understanding the context, the amount of visual supports offered, and identifying the speaker's purpose can be challenging as well.
Yeah, and pronunciation wise, which a lot of you mentioned, it's different from their listeners' expectations. So yes, the accent. All of our listening tasks are recorded using native actors. So there could be a mixture. Once you get to B1, probably a broader mixture of accents. So make sure your students are familiar. They'll probably all be familiar with North American accents from television and cinema, but less common Australian, New Zealand, and regional UK accents and Irish. So Welsh, Scottish, Northern English, Southern English, making sure that they have been exposed to these so they don't freak out in the exam, I think is useful.
We are going to suggest some resources later.
We will. And again, speed of speech, interpreting intonation and stress, which becomes more important at this level. Use of fillers, like I just did, use of fillers, self-correction, and repetition. Yes, Miriam, I think South African as well, B2 and above, and make sure that they have been exposed to them. There's so much material online to ensure that that is the case. So, Victoria, how can we help students with their listening skills?
Yeah, we need to help them before, during listening, and of course, in general. Okay. So before listening, we came up with an activity with mystery.
You came up with this activity. I don't know what the mystery sound is. I'm quite curious. Talk us through, Victoria. Talk us through.
Yeah, nothing very weird. Okay, so it's just like sounds that students maybe don't expect. So we play the sound and we ask our students to try and predict where the people are and what the story behind the sound is. Okay, and then we try to make the most of their creativity. So with a partner, they can choose one of the sounds and imagine a dialogue that they might hear in that setting.
And what are the mystery sounds, Victoria? You're not going to tell us?
Yeah, well, in this case, it was just people applauding and cheering. And then also a middle-aged man laughing, and then some kind of sound twinkle, apparently.
A twinkle?
Yeah.
What does a twinkle sound like?
I don't know.
Okay, interesting. Any farm animals?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Before listening, we'll talk about the tape script in a second, Albania. But before listening, using the listening to encourage prediction, this is really important, especially in the exam situation, definitely. Get them to use all of the information available to them to help them predict, help them start thinking about the right kind of vocab, think about the topic and anticipate what they will be listening for. Helps reduce the stress. And it helps develop top-down listening skills. What are top-down listening skills, Victoria?
It's the opposite.
Of
Well,
bottom up. Oh, clever. Gosh, she's cheeky, isn't
no,
she?
no, but just like instead of thinking about specific words, thinking about the general context and then using
Lovely. Thank you. Very well explained, Victoria. Helping them while listening, using the tape script. We'll look at this in a bit more detail in a second. Listening again, there's no limit to how many times to listen in class. Helping them build their confidence with exposure to a lot of stuff, I think. And again, scaffold the process. Break tasks down into manageable chunks so that they build up. Okay? Exploiting the script, Victoria.
Yeah, it's an idea that we can use. We can choose an extract of an audio script and write 3 sentences about it. One of them summarizing the text, and two of them which give inaccurate information about the text. Then we read the audio scripts aloud while our students listen, and then students need to identify which sentence is correct. And then as a follow-up activity, we can get our students to do this for us.
Yeah, we could do it with a different tape script, model it first, and then put them into groups and get them to do it with each other. It's quite fun. Helping them generally, as we said, exposure to a variety of texts and accents, teaching them the pronunciation features. And now at B2, inference becomes more important. The understanding across a text and understanding what is being implied rather than what is necessarily being clearly stated. So some resources, Victoria.
Yeah, in this case, this is ListenWise, and it's a website that offers a lot of audio material to choose from on current events and topics. And it is true that not everything is free. Okay, if you want to access lesson plans and other material, you need to pay, but the audio is free, so you can use it.
Lovely. This looks like a great one. I haven't visited this. Victoria found this.
Yeah, I used it quite a lot with my students. It's called Elo. And I think that the great advantage of this is that you can listen to the recordings with different speakers from around the world. So it's a nice way to get students familiar with different accents. And it also has some vocabulary development activities and post-listening activities for comprehension.
And gives the script so that they can hear, they can read as they're listening. I think, as I said, American, Canadian accents, they probably have quite a lot of exposure to already. But Irish, Scottish, Welsh, Antipodean accents from Australia and New Zealand, really nice way to practice. Another approach, Victoria?
Yeah, we can always use news stories. This one is CNN and 10-minute news. And the obvious advantage is that it's authentic listening, and that you can do follow-up activities. For example, students can concentrate on a news story and then do some research and offer more information to the
10 minutes news. You could get a week's worth of activities out of that, I should imagine. And again, integrating skills to get them to research the different stories, present their stories to the class, maybe write what happened before the story, what might happen after the story. Really nice way to link to project work and make it real. BBC 1 Minute World News, I used to use this with B2 and C1 students just at the beginning of every lesson. It's a nice summary of what's going on in the world, which at the moment I imagine will be quite predictable. But it's genuine as well, and tend to use quite clear accents on the BBC, but again a variety of accents as well, so it will give them greater exposure to that.
See, yeah, some of our participants are also mentioning 6 Minutes English, which is also great. It's a great resource. And then also, if you want to make your students familiar with Australian accent, you can use this news in 90 seconds. Again, great for maybe as a warm-up activity at the beginning of the class or just when you're finishing.
Breaking news English, which we looked at the beginning, but another interesting.
Yeah, here you can adapt the pace of the recording so that it's useful for different levels. But hopefully, it will always sound natural, not artificial.
Well, hopefully. I mean, I'm not sure about speeding up, slowing down. Maybe to come to if something is originally quite quickly. I know some people use it. Our listening exams are all supposed to be natural. So even A2, they're not speaking like this. So I think exposure to as much appropriate authentic material as possible. Somebody's mentioned TED in the right-hand side, and TED is another great resource. And lots of the TED talks now come with downloadable audio scripts and with some lesson plans. I think, Victoria, is that the case?
Not sure about the lesson plans, but yeah,
the audio scripts,
definitely the
definitely.
audio script and subtitles as well. And yeah, some participants as well were talking about, we're asking about the links. I think they are all included in the handout you gave access to at the beginning, George.
Yep, they should all be there. And if not, it's Victoria's fault.
Yeah, it will be my fault.
Right.
Hey,
On to
George,
speaking.
you didn't mention lyrics training. You don't
I
like
thought you did. Well, okay, lyrics training. Talk us through. Oh, yeah, sorry, I forgot. This is Victoria's because her favourite song is Perfect by Ed Sheeran. I didn't know. It surprised me, Victoria. And what's Happier by Marshmallow?
Yeah, no idea.
No?
Sorry, I took this screenshot at random. But it's a great resource. It's fun, and yeah, you can do it with your students if they behaved well.
Lovely. Okay, we'll finish off with a look at speaking. Victoria, where are we going to start?
Yeah, we're going to start with some resources that you can use to practice speaking in class. So in this case, general questions that you can use as a warm-up activity to get students to interact and work in pairs.
Yeah, this is a really nice practice for part one of the first speaking test. Part one is similar in all of our speaking tests, obviously at different levels, but it's a sort of interview format, examiner two candidates to get them as relaxed as you can be in a speaking exam, asking personal questions and more general questions. And this is all ready to go, isn't it, on Word Wheel?
Yeah.
And you can use this really nicely in a digital context if they're in breakout rooms. Click the button and they get a different question. It takes some of the pressure off you in terms of preparation. Another one here, Victoria, Mentimeter or Mentimeter.
Yeah, no idea. You tell me. But it's again a great resource to make students be a more active part of your lesson, so they can suggest topics they would like to discuss, and in this case, starting with letter F.
Football is the biggest one.
Yeah.
What else? Are there any mistakes on there? No, they are all with F. Lovely. Moving on. We speak a lot about self and peer assessment, and it's not easy to do, like that. But with the right preparation and the right setup, I think it can be really useful. So what have we done here, Victoria?
Yeah, we have tried to word the marking criteria so that students can really understand them and make the most of them, to use them for self-assessment and also peer assessment. So in this case, it's just like a summary of what the marking criteria is.
I mean, yeah, it's maybe slightly above level the way it's worded for B2. So bringing it down, we're going to be doing a session on assessing speaking online next week, and we'll look at that in more detail. Look at this in more detail for different levels. But I think making them aware of the criteria and putting it in language that they can understand, and give it to them as a checklist when they're helping assess each other, helping assess themselves. I don't know if any of you are recording at the moment. Voice Spice, somebody mentioned it earlier. It's a really nice resource for getting them to record themselves speaking. And then they can use these checklists to try and mark themselves. Just quickly, that you will all get a recording of this, and it will be on YouTube. And I have given everyone access to the certificate and to the handout and useful links. I'll give you access again before we continue, but we're getting a lot of the same question in the chat box. Okay, so giving you all access now. So an overview of B2 first. We've spoken about part one. Which is a sort of interview stage. Part two, Victoria?
Yeah, they need to compare and contrast photographs. Okay, and it's the long term. And then they move on to part three, which is the collaborative task.
Okay, we're going to look at part three today. The difference between B1 and B2 for the long term, the describing the photograph, beginning to speculate a bit more, don't you think, Victoria?
Yeah.
Thinking a bit
definitely.
more about feelings, about what might be happening, whereas B1 is quite straight
It's more
descriptive.
description, yeah. Yeah, sorry, Nalia was asking about where we found the wheel, and I think it's in word wall.
Oh, sorry, word wall. Maybe David can find it if he's still there. I'll have a look as we go through the net. We're going to show you a short video, so we'll try and find it during the video. Okay. So the part three, one of the big criteria that comes to the fore in part three is interactive communication. You talk us through, Victoria?
Yes, it has interactive communication has two main parts. So one about initiating and responding. So at band 3 initiates and responds appropriately, and at band 5 we see that students should be also linking contributions to those of other speakers, so really reacting to what their partner said. And in terms of the development of the interaction, at band 3 maintains and develops the interaction, negotiates towards an outcome. They need some support, and at band 5 they don't need this support.
Yeah. Okay. As I said, the certificate is available at the bottom in the files area. Okay. So the speaking skills that we're looking at, if we're breaking it down into individual skills, Victoria?
They will have to exchange ideas, express and justify opinions, also compare, obviously agree, disagree, speculate, suggest, and reaching a decision.
Yeah, a bit of negotiation involved in reaching a decision, speculating, suggesting. Are we going to watch the video now? Yes. Right. So we're just going to show you this part three. In the handouts that we gave you access to, you have the speaking criteria towards the end, I think. So we'd like you to focus on interactive communication for this, and we'll watch this video now. And we'll see you in 5 or 6 minutes. Okay?
Now, I'd like you to talk about something together for about 2 minutes. I'd like you to imagine that a town wants more tourists to visit. Here are some ideas they're thinking about and a question for you to discuss. First, you have some time to look at the task. Okay. Now, talk to each other about why these ideas would attract more tourists to the town.
Well, I think all the ideas on the booklet are quite good, actually. I think holiday flats will attract more tourists because there is just more space for the tourists to live in while they're on holiday. And what do you think about that?
I agree with you, but maybe providing parks is much better.
Why do you think that, actually?
Because I think to spend time in parks are good with the family.
Yeah, I think you can have a lot of fun in parks, though. Just having a nice picnic with your friends or stuff. Yeah, that would be nice. But more shops, yeah, I think it would be nice because I think a lot of people, mostly women, like shopping, and I think having a lot of shops in your town would be nice for the shopaholics.
Yes, or I don't know, maybe the tourists like to spend more time in parks than go shopping, no?
Maybe if you are kind of a nature person, if you like nature a lot, then parks are probably much better than a lot of shops.
Yes.
Putting up security cameras, yeah, I think that's a really good idea because then the town is safe and tourists will feel safe.
Yes, with the cameras are good idea because the people are more safe than without cameras
Yeah,
of the people that want to steal.
yeah. No, I don't think building a large nightclub is really a good idea to attract tourists. I don't know.
It depends the age of the tourist, no?
Yeah, that definitely, but I don't think
No.
it will attract a lot of tourists because of one club. I think
Yes.
it's a combination of several things that attract tourists.
Thank you. Now you have about a minute to decide which idea would be best for the town.
Okay. So what do you think is the best idea for the town to do?
I think building holiday flats, maybe.
Yes. Why do you think that?
Because all the tourists like to have flats to stay.
Yeah, but maybe the parks are just are a better idea to provide because they're really nice to just have a walk in and enjoy the nature with your friends and family.
Yes. So if you like providing parks, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, I do think that's a good idea. Yeah, but also the holiday flats I think is a good idea because you have to have space for the tourists to live in. So if there's no space, there probably won't be a lot of tourists. Yeah.
Thank you. Can I have the booklet, please? Thank you.
Hello.
Hello again.
Hello, Victoria.
Hello.
So, a really nice way to deal with videos, as we said, you can give students the criteria and ask them to choose one candidate and mark them using the criteria. Another nice way, the speaking skills that we looked at earlier, give them a selection of those and get them to listen out for specific examples of how they have done this. So reaching a decision, exchanging ideas.
Comparing, negotiating.
What else do we have? Agreeing and disagreeing.
Expressing and justifying an opinion.
Speculation and suggesting. There's some really nice language from both of them in this. I think Florine took over a little bit. And she did finally agree that having flats was a good idea. Poor little Maria. So, yeah, but if they don't have anywhere to live. So, yeah, it's okay to have parks, but you need somewhere to sleep. We are doing lots more webinars, Angelica, and I think Luis was saying earlier, we always run them at this time. We do ours at 11 o'clock Spanish time and 5:30 Spanish time. So keep your eyes out on the website for further webinars. So we asked you to have a look at interactive communication. How do you think they did, Victoria?
I think they did well, but we need to look at the performance in detail and quote the criteria to be sure.
Lovely. And as you can see, there are lots more of these videos on YouTube, and you can download the examiner's comments. And what do you notice about the examiner's comments, Victoria? What's very important?
They are quoting the assessment criteria, so it's a nice way to be as objective as possible. Exactly.
Same with the writing criteria. I think if you use, I would say use our criteria, but you can use whatever criteria you want. But using a standard set of criteria and quoting it with examples, quote example. can really help the students identify the areas that they're doing well in and the areas where they need to improve. I think it's also very important always to make sure that they're aware of what they're doing well. Don't you think, Victoria?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, we need to identify strengths and weaknesses, but we try to be motivating as well. We try to motivate our students.
Good. So you can see here, Flochine managed to get a 5. She did very well. She initiated and responded appropriately, linked her contributions to what Maria had said. She initiates a discussion, shows she's listened to Maria before adding her ideas. And she maintains and develops interaction very nicely, frequently invites Maria's responses, making sure your students have nice little chunks. What do you think? What do you think about that? Why do you think that? So what do you think is the best idea? Keeps things moving, especially, as we all know, in quite a stressful situation. Maria, Victoria?
Yeah, Maria also did quite well. She got 4 because she showed that she can initiate and respond appropriately. She was listening to Florine's ideas and responded with her own. Also, although she responds to Florine's contributions and adds her own ideas, she could have extended her answers a bit more. And Maria's addition to Florine's responses to the question about the advantage of living in a place where there are a lot of tourists is appropriate. And finally, in terms of development, Maria maintains and develops the interaction with very little support. And there are some examples to support that.
Excellent. Some of you are now finding the certificate good, and the PDF should be editable. Okay. If you have any problems, please send an email to the email on the website, and we can deal with any certificates that haven't been downloaded. Okay. So to finish off, more useful resources for you.
On our main website, there is a section supporting every teacher, where you will find a wide range of resources, exam preparation material. You will also be able to check our webinars, the upcoming ones, and also there is a blog supporting every teacher and free teaching resources. They have been created over the last weeks, and what is new about it is that they are adapted to teaching online.
They will be useful hereafter. They have been designed specifically for online and face-to-face teaching. Okay, so please check them out. There are quite a lot for A2, B1, B2. There are a few at least for C1 and more to come. So please download them all. Step-by-step lesson plans with links to all the resources that you need. Please use them. This as well was produced a month or 2 ago. It's a big interactive PDF, again, with links to everything that you need for exam preparation, all of our digital resources, general English teaching resources. So download this. I think this is on the useful links document that we gave you access to in the files box. Okay. And that's it. We finished a little bit early, which is odd, which is rare. What happened? Any more questions just for the last couple of minutes? It was lovely to have all of you here. Thank you all very much for coming.
Thank you very much for coming.
And the recording
staying as well.
And staying, yeah. The recording will be well, yeah, thanks, David. The recording will be available on YouTube. And make sure you get that useful links document we've given you access to. Okay. All right, well, thank you all very much. We hope to see you in some future sessions. As I said, we have Assessing Speaking online next week, and we'll look at A2, B1, B2 will be the main focus, but we'll be looking at resources that you can use at all levels, and how we can effectively, well, hopefully effectively assess our students online at the moment as far as possible. And as I said, we'll be going a lot deeper into reading and use of English at C1 and C2, listening, writing and speaking over the next few weeks. So they're all available on the Cambridge English Webinars website. It'd be great to see some of you there. And we look forward to seeing you, Luis. I'm glad that it's a good time for Mexico. We have tried to time these so that people from all over the world can
join us.
Can join us. Exactly. All right. Well, thank you all very much. I hope you have a nice rest of the week. Stay safe, everybody, and we'll see you soon. Okay.
Bye. Thank
you very much, and thank you to David for keeping up with the chat box. This is quite tricky. Lovely. All right. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.